Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Oh well, I guess here we go again. It's yet again another round of the leftist lamestream media quoting literal foreign authoritarian government propaganda as if it's the gospel truth. Remember when the president told us that US and China were engaged in high-level tariff negotiations, and the media, instead of taking the president for his word, instead parroted the CCP's propaganda ministry and just stated, fact check false. No meeting has happened between the nations. China is laughing at the president's pressure campaign. That was basically the headline. Then it turned out that actually a Korean journalist caught Chinese officials meeting at the US Treasury. I guess there was a high-level meeting after all. But of course, instead of taking the president's word for it, the media ran with the foreign regime propaganda talking point. And well, now it seems they might be doing the exact same thing here, pushing a supposed intelligence leak that now backs up the Iranian regime's claim that President Trump's strikes on their nuclear facilities only did a little bit of damage. You know, just a scratch, supposedly only setting them back by a couple months. Yeah, I don't know, folks. I'm not sure I'm buying it. But let's, of course, engage with the claim. Let's engage with the story. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so take a look at the CNN segment.
3 sources tell CNN that according to an early U.S. intelligence assessment, the U.S. military strikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely only set it back a few months.
That's right. So this is an assessment that actually is out from the Defense Intelligence Agency. That is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it was based on a battle damage assessment conducted by U.S. CENTCOM after the strikes, according to one of the sources.
This is the first assessment that we are getting that the U.S. intelligence community has found about the battle damage that resulted from those U.S. military strikes on these 3 Iranian nuclear facilities over the weekend. And as you said, it was produced by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is the Pentagon's intelligence arm. And it is worth noting that it is a very early assessment. The strikes were only a matter of days ago, and the intelligence community is still gathering intelligence. They are still working to come up with a full, comprehensive picture of what exactly happened here. But based on a battle damage assessment that was carried out by U.S. Central Command, essentially looking at the images and looking at what was actually damaged, the Defense Intelligence Agency has assessed that the core components of Iran's nuclear program are largely intact, and that Iran's nuclear program has essentially only been set back by months. Now, we presented this information to the White House for comment, and White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt, she did acknowledge the existence of this assessment, but she said in a statement that the administration disagrees with it. She said, quote, "This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everyone knows what happens when you drop 14 30,000-pound bombs perfectly on their targets, total obliteration." Now, it is worth noting here that there has been dissent, I should say, within the intelligence community, within the defense community, about just how much of an impact these massive bunker buster bombs would actually have on Iran's nuclear facilities. It was far from certain, given that these bombs had never been tested in an actual combat scenario, whether they would actually penetrate those very, very deep underground tunnels that lie underneath these nuclear facilities. It does conclude at this point, again, it is still very early, that those underground facilities, including the centrifuges, including the highly enriched uranium that everyone has been talking so much about, those are largely intact. Now, of course, this does stand at odds with what President Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth have been saying in recent days about the impact of these U.S. military strikes. Of course, President Trump said it was totally obliterated, and Secretary Hegseth did as well. And he actually also provided CNN with a statement. And he said that, quote, "Based on everything we have seen, and I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. Our massive bombs hit exactly the right spot at each target and worked perfectly. The impact of those bombs is buried under a mountain of rubble in Iran. So anyone who says the bombs were not devastating is just trying to undermine the president and the successful mission." Now, our sources did emphasize here that there was severe damage that was done largely to the above ground structures at these nuclear nuclear sites.
So again, we're in one of those situations. Do we believe this leftist shit rag of a network? Excuse my French, but how else shall I describe CNN? Or do we trust the president, who's got a pretty good track record with honesty? I know some leftoids would screech at that statement, but it's true. Again, one of the president's biggest problem isn't that he's a liar. No, rather it's that he's got no filter and he tells the truth so much, or at least he always tries to tell his truth, regardless of who it offends. But anyways, we've seen the movie before. How quick the leftist media is to take the word of foreign adversaries, as long as it fits the anti-Trump narrative. They would love nothing more than to announce to the world that President Trump has failed in his military operation, to put those headlines out that the strikes were ineffective. I mean, they're practically praying for failure just so they could pin it on him. But of course, it's a little bit of a double whammy. It's not just the negative anti-Trump headline, but also continuing to push fear as their number one product, to continue pushing this narrative that Iran is simply months away from attaining a nuclear bomb. Obviously, all to justify more foreign entanglements, to lay the groundwork for the same endless war machine that we've seen before. But President Trump, well, he's saying something quite different. Yeah, he's quite adamant, frankly, that CNN is full of you-know-what. Take a look.
I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all. And frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. When I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. These networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people. And the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
He absolutely obliterates the fake news media and then says unequivocally, flat out, that these facilities are gone, not damaged, but rather obliterated. And he takes it to another level by backing those incredibly brave and incredibly talented American pilots and backing the intel that he's receiving, not the intel leaks that conveniently find themselves in CNN's hands. No, he's saying they are gone, and also he's making it quite clear that really it doesn't even matter. You know, if the strikes truly were a failure, if they were ineffective, well, he's pretty much already committed to possibly round 2. The president just released this on Truth Social. He says unequivocally that Iran will never rebuild their nuclear facilities. So obviously, what does that mean? If they try, well, he plans on getting in their way. But alas, I don't think that's going to be necessary. I think this is yet again another media hoax. Caroline Levitt actually responds. She chimes in and says, fake news CNN strikes again. This alleged assessment is flat out wrong and was classified as top secret, but was still leaked to CNN by an anonymous low-level loser in the intelligence community. The leaking of this alleged assessment is a clear attempt to demean President Trump and discredit the brave fighter pilots who conducted a perfectly executed mission to obliterate Iran's nuclear program. Everybody knows what happens when you drop 13,000-pound bombs perfectly on their target. Total obliteration. And she also adds that this CNN story was written by the same, quote, reporter who wrote the very first fake news story claiming the Hunter Biden laptop story was disinformation. How did that work out for you, Natasha Bertrand? She then posts this, a 2020 piece where Natasha Bertrand wrote, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. So what does that tell you? She was at the cutting edge of that story, meaning John Brennan and other resistance intelligence characters fed her the fake news narrative about the Hunter Biden laptop and she pushed it as the first journalist to do so, meaning likely this was the exact same thing. Natasha Bertrand gets some bogus assessment, some bogus leak that parrots the Iranian talking point from some low-level staffer, yeah, give me a break, probably John Brennan's intern, claiming that the strike, it was ineffective, and Natasha Bertrand leads with it. I mean, clear information operation, written all over it. I don't know about you guys, but I'm trusting the president. I'll take the word of the guy who's actually running the country over the propaganda machines that are constantly trying to gaslight us into the next war narrative, as if they're playing some wartime simulator. The president of the United States has access to the absolute best intelligence. He's got the best info, and he's saying unequivocally that this strike was successful, and I'm taking his word for it. I think that's just the logical thing to do, because clearly Natasha Bertrand nor CNN can be trusted.
It's all garbage. It's all fake news.
Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.